Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're not doing a regular old walkabout. We are going to talk about photography and talk about why we should take photos, or why I take photos, and why I think other people should take photos. And basically just the general philosophy and the idea behind taking photos. This is going to be very talk heavy. There's going to be some photos, hopefully, up on screen. Some of my own, some of others, but overall the gist is more about talking about photos and more of how and why, rather than just specific cameras or film stocks or techniques. So I think that when it comes down to taking photos, there's so many layers of things that you could do to improve your work and so much to consider. And it's not always just down to actually taking the picture, but more about the ethos of why you're taking the picture or what you're looking to take a picture of. So you could be taking pictures to tell stories, you could be taking pictures to document. And in the modern age of the internet, it's very easy to get caught up in seeing so much work and all the influencers and all of the likes and shares and follows and all of that. And there's all these numbers and metrics that we could easily get caught up in. And I just want to talk about what drives me to take my photos and some of what I think is worth considering in photography. Let's first talk about what photography is, or at least what I think it is. And to me, photography is essentially just like curating the world. You pick a certain area, a certain person, a certain view, if you will. You make a lot of choices, about what you're including in the frame, what you're not including, what kind of focal length you use, what kind of aperture settings and stuff. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to portray something specific. You're abstracting away from what is real life, and you're curating a very specific point of view. So that's what I believe photography is meant to be. And there's lots of choices to be made, but sometimes it's also just about documenting what you see in the easiest or most convenient manner. Sometimes it's not always about fiddling with your settings to get a perfect shot. Sometimes it's just about getting the shot. And cameras are actually great because they introduce limitations. They introduce limitations to the world. You have an angle of view you're limited to. You have the amount of light that is present in the scene affects your camera in a way that it doesn't affect your eyes. Your eyes are able to see so much better. They're, an incredible instrument that cannot be replicated at present with the technology available to us in a form factor that would be available to the masses. So, you use film or digital or whatever you use, you're going to be introducing limitations that sort of create barriers to what you're able to make, but also push you to make decisions about how you are choosing to portray the scene. So photography is about taking into account these barriers and trying to curate the world into a single still frame. So the first question: why do I take photos, and what I believe is the reason that more people should take photos? And the first of it is the ability. In this day and age, we have access to cameras at an unprecedented rate and availability. Everyone has a camera on their phone in their pocket, and it's plenty capable of capturing just a nice moment of a day. It could be something pretty that you see, or just a moment between your friends or your family. And I think that that is a fantastic ability and something that can often be overlooked because of how easy and ubiquitous it's become. Just because we have this and we've normalized it so much, we sometimes overlook the novelty of being able to capture an image of anything at any time so easily, so acceptably in society. And just, you know, very often as well, because we're not limited to the age of film and analog where you had a limited number of shots. You probably had to either think a little bit harder about the photos that you want to take, but also have that limitation that you don't get to see them right away. It's also something that, because the film had to be taken somewhere to develop, you'd end up with physical copies or the prints. Now we sort of take these pictures. We have a relatively unlimited capacity to take so many pictures, and sometimes we just take them and we forget them. We just never look back. And so there's this novelty of being able to take that picture that is lost in this digital age. But nonetheless, I still love the fact that we are able to take the pictures in the first place. Maybe many of us aren't looking back and actually appreciating the fact that we've taken these pictures, but the ability to take them is equally useful. But yes, so it's a little bit of a double-edged sword that we can take all of these pictures so easily, but we may not always appreciate them as much because we take them so easily. Anyway, all of this to say, I am a big fan of the fact that anyone can take a picture now and capture a moment in their life. Let's talk about the concept of like what is good photography and what is bad photography. Like most art, it's very much a subjective thing. There's definitely might be some photographs which you could argue are objectively good, but at the end of the day, you definitely will have lots of bodies of work that will appeal to certain groups or certain individuals and will not to others. You know, you have very polarizing photographers in documentary and street. You have people like Bruce Gilden, Martin Parr, who take pictures of people doing things, or like very close-up photos of people's faces. Sometimes they use things like flash, and maybe that's not to everyone's taste, whether to actually take those photos or even look at those photos. And that's fully understandable. There's a lot of range in what's good for you and good for others. But it's important to note that the primary audience, in my opinion, the primary audience for your photography should be yourself, and the people that you maybe are taking the photos of, in the sense of documentary. So if you're taking photos of your friends, of your family, just doing things, you're capturing that moment to remember. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's more about that memory, about being able to capture something that, because we have the ability to eternalize everything that we do, or, you know, even maybe not eternalize, but at least preserve for an extended period of time. And I think that it's very important that we use it, not to go into, you know, the non-unlimited digital storage out there, but for the most part, it's not going to hurt if everyone's taking a couple photos every day. And it's very common that most people do, but mostly people are taking pictures of things that they see and sort of forgetting it. And a lot of people take pictures of like their food and things like that. But I want to just shift that a little bit and say, why not look at taking pictures of your life, of your family, of the things that you want to preserve? You know, take a picture of your apartment, take a picture of your plants, or something that you want to look back at. You know, we love to take pictures of our pets, of our children, and things like that. So in that same way, just take that and apply that to the rest of your life. Romanticize it just a little bit. That being said, I don't expect everyone in the world to become a photographer, a documentary photographer, a street photographer, or anything like that. I'm just more trying to point out that a little bit of intentionality in the way you're taking your photos or what you're taking your photos of may help you to discern a voice for your own photography. And that's something that could be very useful. There's many ways on learning how to be better at photography. You could study specific techniques. You could look at lots and lots of photographs of the greats, or just go down to whatever local bookstore you have, pick up any old photo book. There's so many amazing photographers out there, many of whom will probably never be mentioned in, vast, large scale, but that doesn't mean that their work won't speak to you. You might just find something that fits your niche, and that's really important because, again, we have so much ability now that didn't exist before. It's more and more accessible for people to pick up a camera with digital cameras or film cameras. So, coming back to why I take pictures. And for me, like I said, the primary audience for my work is myself. And if anyone else should like that, that's just a bonus. And it's good, it's nice, it is good to share your work with other people. It feels good to get that sort of appreciation. But at the end of the day, I'm looking out to take the pictures that I want to take. I want to show you the way that I see things, the way that, I'm looking out into the world and things that catch my eye. And sometimes they're mundane, sometimes they're just things that are colorful. I'm a little bit like a cat, just be distracted by patches of light or bright colors. But other times it can be about telling stories. Not necessarily always the most easiest thing to do. It's definitely quite difficult, but I think the more you look out for things to unfold, the more you will see them. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy where if you're looking to find stories, you might just find them. So at the end of the day, for me, it just comes down to taking the pictures that I want to take, and that's what I want to impart today. Essentially, there's a lot of things that you could do. You could think very deeply about it, and there's definitely a lot of rabbit holes to fall into, and I just want to simplify it a little bit, but also point out how complex it can be. Okay, we've talked a little bit about the why. Let's talk a little bit about the how to take photos. And unfortunately, this is the part where, like a lot of this, because it's a very philosophical conversation, is that there's no one answer, right? I can't tell you how to take the pictures you want to take because I don't know the pictures you want to take, because it's going to vary so much from person to person. That being said, I think that once you start to consume more and more photography, or you take more and more pictures, you will slowly but surely arrive towards the destination that you are trying to get to. You will discover what appeals to you, and the more things you learn, the more you learn about what's possible and what's easy to do, what's harder, how to get certain pictures or certain things to look a certain way. So there's a lot to learn. It's a never-ending cycle because there's an infinite number of combinations of scenes and light and settings and lenses and cameras and whatnot. But instead of being bogged down by the ideas of what you're limited by, it's more important to just get the work done by trying with whatever it is that you have. So you want to talk about some specifics? What makes a great street photo? Is it the story? Is it the coincidence? Is it juxtaposition? Is it the layers? And again, there's no answer. A great photo isn't made by any one thing. It's not made by being perfectly in focus or tack sharp. A great photo is made by how it makes you feel when you see it. You should be able to tell a great photo just by looking at it, and that feeling of, yeah, this feels like a great photo is all you really need to know. That being said, there's lots of things you can do. There's lots of things that you can do to increase your chances of getting good photos. And so we're going to look at some great photos in my opinion are great photos. So we're going to look at what in my opinion are some great photos, and we'll break it down a little bit just to get an idea of what I think makes these photos great, but also some things that you may want to try out yourself. And while we're on the case of looking at photos, I'll bring up some of my personal favorite photos that I've taken. We'll talk about why I love these photos, because some of them aren't all that interesting, and some of them are just nice to look at. You know, sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes it's just about aesthetics, and sometimes it's about a lot more. So we're going to talk first about the photo of the red chair. I mean, the chair isn't red, but the room is red. Anyway, I love this photo because I struggled to capture it a little bit. I just remember this is a scene in a relative's home, and I just remember seeing it and thinking this would make a great photo. I just love how this room is, and then there's the green outside, and I just wanted to get a shot that would capture all of that. And when I took this photo, I actually wasn't able to get it to look right, because at the time I just didn't really understand how to work with the raw files in my camera. But I think now, having a lot more experience, I'm able to get it to a place where I think it looks right, and it really harkens back to some of the early color photos for me, the kind that I really like Eggleston's red wall and the white light that if you haven't seen, I'll put it up now. But it's just that same sort of that light and dark balance that exists in this picture. I really like it. Again, it calls back to the limitations of the camera, creating something that's nicer to look at than just what you would see with your eyes. And actually, in my zine, the next photo is back to back to it. It's a photo of a building that's yellow and blue, and I was about to take a picture of it because I thought it was pretty. It was like nice and minimalist, and then as I was lining up to take the shot, a man walked through the frame wearing a Barcelona jersey with the same exact colors, with a blue on the shoulder and the bottom, and I thought, this is a great coincidence. And sometimes this is just what street photos are, they're coincidences. But sometimes that's just what it is. A great photo isn't always planning. Sometimes it's luck, and sometimes it's both. Okay, enough tooting my own horn. Time to talk about other people's pictures, and this is going to be slightly external because I'm sure some of these photos have been talked about at length. Maybe there are interviews about specific photos. I don't really know about all of them, but I'm just going to tell you what I like about them and what I think makes them great photos. Starting off with this great one by Martin Parr, and it's a photo at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which is a famous popular tourist attraction, and it plays so well because there's this really fun optical illusion that people do at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, like many of these large tourist attractions where they stand by and they do a perspective trick where it looks like they're holding up the tower. But Martin Parr, the genius that he is, decides to step back and take this photo from a different perspective where everyone's doing this and he's just standing there in a field getting pictures of people miming holding up this tower. And it's so silly but so real. Like, this is what people are doing, and it's just funny when you take a step back and look at it from a different angle than the one that they want you to see, and that's what makes it so real and so compelling. Also, it's just funny, and I find comedic street photography very appealing personally. Moving on to a Canadian great, Fred Herzog, who took a lot of photos in Vancouver, and most of his work is just masterful use of color. I mean, it's fantastic. You should see some of this. I'm just gonna flash a few of them because they're quite distinct, and they just have this amazing saturated vintage feel that's just so nice. And sometimes it's just a photo of nothing, like just an everyday scene, but people are wearing bright colors, or there's a nice colored car or a wall. But I'm also going to focus specifically on one of his pictures, which is called Bible Reader. And again, this is a scene that could basically be considered quite mundane, but he saw the beauty in it, of this man just reading the Bible through this store window. And, you know, we can talk about how the light hits and everything's great, but specifically I just want to point out that to him, what caught his attention was this. You know, he was looking at just someone going about their everyday, stopping to read this, and he thought, this is going to make a good photo. And it's just documenting real life, and it's simple, but it's so elegant. This video is getting way too long now, so I'm just going to talk briefly about one more photo and then flash a few more by some great photographers who you should definitely check out if you haven't already. So this photo is by a friend of mine who is a great photographer, and he works in Dhaka, the city I grew up in. And it's just a man who's so mesmerized by something off screen. I mean, I've read his caption, and it's about he's looking at a large video screen, but it's just, the beauty in this photo is entirely in the expression on this man's face, and such a normal thing to see. Sometimes you'll walk through the streets, and I do this all the time, and I see people lost in thought, or, you know, just really expressive about something. And this is the sort of thing that just makes a compelling image. You know, you can document what people are feeling just based on the look on their face. Anyway, all this to say that there's just an incredible amount of street and documentary photographers out there. You know, Mary Ellen Mark, Diane Arbus, Ernst Haas, Saul Leiter. These are just some popular names, but if I were to sit down and talk about so many of the ones I love, this would be a ridiculously long feature-length film amount of footage. So here's just a few pictures. So, in conclusion, I just want to do a little bit of like a small TLDR, or I guess TLDW in this case, because I did a lot of yapping, and maybe you didn't want to watch all of that. I don't blame you for it. But anyway, if you take away anything from this video, it's that I want you to take pictures because you can. You have the ability to do so. We have an unprecedented ability now. You know, you have cameras everywhere. They're so readily available. You have one in your pocket, probably as a phone. So use that ability to capture moments in your own life, document your family, your friends, things that you find interesting, and do it with a little bit of intentionality so that the pictures are more meaningful to you and that you're more inclined to look back at them, because that's another thing that happens with snapshots is sometimes you just take them and forget them. But if you're being more intentional, you're more likely to look back at them and, you know, romanticize your life a little bit. Your individual worldview will be unique from someone else's, and so you should capture the photos that you want to take that please you. And if you can share your worldview, then that's great. You know, your vision is unique and special, but you know, if it's just for you, that's fine, because you should be your primary audience. But it's important to document the world as you see it. And beyond that, there's a lot of things you could get bogged down by, but if you don't try, you'll never be able to, you know, actually succeed. So don't worry about having the best camera or the best technique. You start off with whatever you have and the intention of capturing whatever it is that you want to capture, and you work your way up from there. So there's a lot of photographers and photos that we talked about, and I'll link as many of them as I can in the description on YouTube and on Instagram. Probably will try, but links don't work as well, so you may as well just click to the YouTube video and look at the links there. But yeah, that's it for me, and I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully it'll be a regular walkabout, but I don't know. I don't really plan these things all that much. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But thank you for watching if you watched all of that. If you didn't, that's okay. Just hope that you got something from it.